Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as I show you how to divide lady's mantle. So let's go. I love lady's mantle. I think it's very pretty and I only have it in one place in my yard. I love it not only for the beautiful foliage that it has this time of year, which is early July, but I especially love it for the beautiful green foliage on the leaves. It looks so pretty when it's rained or when water has dropped on the leaves. You see little tiny water droplets all over it. They look like little beads glistening, and it makes the plant look very dainty, very beautiful. I have a large hydrangea right here, and I had and still have a bunch of lady's mantle around it. Now, this area of my garden does not have any irrigation to it. And even though the lady's mantle thrives, I am at a point where I really want to add drip irrigation to this bed. And in order to effectively add drip irrigation to this bed, I had to remove a bunch of plants from this bed. The biggest plant that I want to remove, though, is the lady's mantle. And the reason I want to remove it is not only so I can get access to this area and add the drip irrigation to it, but also I have not divided my lady's mantle for a number of years. And even though I had the lady's mantle all around this bed, I did start this project and I started digging up and dividing a bunch of lady's mantle already. And there are some bare areas in this bed, but there are still areas where this lady's mantle needs to be dug up. So I'm going to take you in for a closer look and show you my process for digging up this plant and then dividing it. I'm just going to be using a large shovel, and when it comes to digging the lady's mantle plant up, you want to make sure you're not digging right at the base of the plant. You always want to dig out about 1 to 2 inches from the base of your plant. And it's a good idea to dig all around the plant, not just on one side of it. And as I'm loosening up the plant, I'm noticing that it's actually naturally dividing by itself, which is super sweet. Now, even though I'm doing this during the heat of summer, you typically want to do this type of project in the spring months or in the fall months. But if you do this in the fall, you want to make sure you give yourself plenty of time to let those roots establish, because you don't want to be doing a job like this and then the plant doesn't have enough time to establish its root before the winter months. But for me, now is a good time to do this project because I'm working on this bed in terms of adding the irrigation. So I just need to make sure I am giving these plants plenty of water, and I'm going to put them in the shade after we're all done dividing them. Okay, so let's take all these plants and let's go ahead and divide them into smaller sections. You know what I love when it comes to dividing plants? It's basically free plants. And then when the time is right and I want to shop my own yard, I can go to that area where I've dug up all of these plants, where I've divided them, and I can start putting them around my yard. And I have a lot of areas in my garden that I'm planning to weed and reclaim. And during that process, I'm going to need plants, and I'm planning to put a lot of this lady's mantle in those areas. I'm currently doing this project outside, but if it was a very sunny, very hot day, I would be doing it somewhere cooler because I don't want to put any more stress on these plants than needs to be. So come in for a closer look, and I'm going to show you my process for dividing these down into smaller pieces. So this was one clump of the lady's mantle that we dug out. And right away, you can see some beautiful roots here. And that's a great area, somewhere in this area here, where we can go ahead and cut. And I forgot to mention, any tools that you use, be it a shovel or hand pruners, you want to make sure that they're sterilized. And I like to use rubbing alcohol to sterilize my garden equipment. So I'm going to be using hand pruners, and all I'm going to do is actually find a place to cut where I still have some foliage or leaves and where there's also some roots. So I'm going to cut right here. Now, even though this was blooming, I am going to remove the blooms at this point because I really want the plant to recover from the shock, and I want to just minimize any growth that doesn't need to be on here. So we're going to go ahead and remove the bloom, and I'm going to follow it down on its stem to a leaf node. So this is a leaf node right here, and I'm going to cut right above that leaf node. And then this can go in my compost pile because it's not diseased. There's nothing wrong with it. If I wanted to, I could remove a few more leaves, but I'm going to leave the leaves on here. And if I find in a few days that some of the bigger leaves are starting to wilt, I can definitely cut those off. As long as you leave a couple of small leaves on here, you're totally fine. Now you could take this piece and put this somewhere else in your garden. The key is when you plant this, you want to make sure that you're not covering up too much of the crown of the plant. So you definitely want to make sure that the roots are under the ground. And even this part here, which is kind of like a rhizome, you want to make sure that that's covered. But the key thing is you want to make sure that the crown of the plant, which is right in here, is not covered too much with soil. I'm just recycling used pots that I got from a local garden center. And I am planning to use these pots for all of my plants so that I can then go shopping later on in my yard. And I'm just filling this up with some free compost that I got from a local transfer station. But you can use whatever you have on hand. And I want to make sure I'm backfilling around the plant. I'm going to push down. And that's good. Notice that we did not cover the crown that's in the center here, but the roots are definitely in the soil. And you just want to make sure you press down on your plant, give it some water. And in this case, I'm going to put this plant in the shade, and this plant is good to go. Here's another one. Again, this one is easy. You can see that the roots are coming off, so you could come in and you could cut there. But I want to see if there's another piece here that's not as easy. This one has some roots here, but it's definitely kind of intertwined with the other plants. So at this point, I can try to pull it off and see if that works. And I'm having a little bit of resistance in this case. The piece behind here, however, has come right off, and that's great. But with this piece that's given me a little bit of a hard time, I could take my hand pruners and I could just come right in, and basically I'm finding an area where I can make a cut, as long as I make sure that this plant has roots on it. And with any sharp cutting instrument, you want to make sure you're careful. You don't want to cut yourself. And I can come in right here and make that cut. And this piece right here is old growth. I could trim some of this back if I really want to. And this can go in the ground, or I can pot this up. But that's how I take a division off of a plant when it's a little bit harder to remove. Now, I showed you a method where I was digging out the whole entire plant. You definitely could do it where if you don't want to dig out your whole entire plant and you only want to dig out part of it, that's definitely an option as well. And with that type of method, you could do that in the spring, in the fall, or even in the summer. But just know that if you're going to dig out a section of it during the summer, then the plant might not look the best. And that's all right because it will recover. So there are a couple of options, but since I am redoing that flower bed, for me, it made sense for me to dig out the whole entire plant. Now, I don't know how many plants I'm going to end up with by the time I've dug up all of my lady's mantle from that flower bed and divided it down into single pieces. But I'm feeling pretty confident I'm going to have a ton of pieces, which I'm so excited about. I'd love to hear from you. Do you have lady's mantle out in your landscape? And if not, are you considering getting it? If you don't have it, I highly recommend it. What I like about it is it's a very versatile plant. It does well in full sun, but it even does well in part sun conditions. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop them down in the comment section below. And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.